Alright, last bit of detailing how I think a Dragon Ball Hero shooter would work. In part 1, we covered the basic controls and how gameplay might work, as well as what the main game modes would be, and covered 6 of the 24 characters I planned out. Part 2 was simple. We went over the arcade modes and an additional 9 characters. To wrap things up, we'll go over the final 2 game modes and remaining 9 characters. Overwatch is probably the best known hero shooter, which nosedived over a cliff with its attempted rebrand as its so-called sequel. The one promise that would have made the game feel like a sequel was its story mode, which never happened. No, I do not count a $15 DLC made so people would say it wasn't worth it. Today's first game mode is just what Overwatch 2 initially promised. I know the devs said it just wasn't possible, but let's be for real. It's not that difficult to have maps where the enemies start weak enough for the basic characters to be able to fight them, even with their PvP focused kits. As you progress through the map, the enemies get tougher and arrive in bigger groups, but you collect XP from defeating them and completing objectives, which can then be spent to level up your character, changing the way they fight. Yes, it would take a lot of work to do this, planning and coding skill trees as well as new maps and enemy types, but that's part of game development, and for Overwatch 2, it had been in development for years. By giving characters branching skill trees, you introduce replayability into the PvE mode. Additionally, branching paths for the maps themselves and a degree of randomness to the enemy and mission types would mean someone could play this game just as often as the main PvP modes with enough variety to not get bored. I genuinely do not understand why we haven't gotten a game that's marketing is just, remember that cool premise from the popular game everyone was excited about? Well, we did it instead. If I'm gonna pretend Dragon Ball gets a hero shooter, then I may as well pretend it's picking up Overwatch 2's slack. Anyways, Dragon Ball offers a good variety of enemies to fight as part of an army. The obvious pick is the Frieza Force. Relive the start of Resurrection F and wipe out alien super soldiers en masse. We could also fight the Red Ribbon Army, who would have androids and mech suits to fill out their higher tier enemies. Then there's Baby's Army, fight a bunch of Tuffle-controlled people who've been given key control. A possessed Gohan or Goten could be the mini-bosses. There's a lot of material to pull from for designing interesting enemies to fight. Now that I've watched Daima, I could throw the Gendarmerie into the mix too. As you progress through a stage, each character would have their own unique upgrade path. Quicker cooldowns, bigger stats, a wider area of effect would cover most of the general upgrades. More specific upgrades could include changing Goku's transformations or always putting him into Super Saiyan. We could also have ways to swap out abilities for different ones better suited to fighting an army of enemies, as opposed to single target or 6-man teams. Oh, and I'd call this one Horde mode. I have one other PvE mode which could be incorporated into the Horde mode, a boss battle mode. It would reuse assets from the Juggernaut mode from the previous part, but instead of a team battle where a giant is the payload, it would just be one team fighting the giant. It's a pretty simple mode, a team versus a Great Ape or Hirudegarn or something. It just feels like an obvious thing for a Dragon Ball game like this to have. On to the characters. And where better to start than perfection itself? As he should, Perfect Cell would be the perfect shield tank with very high health and a lot of ki. His basic melee combo would be fast and have a slightly longer range than most melees. He would have 2 options for his ki blast. The first would project a green energy barrier in front of himself, preventing him from attacking but protecting his team. The second would be a death beam, capable of piercing through targets. His first ability would be a fast-to-fire Kamehameha that does average damage. His second ability would have a longer cooldown but allow him to instantly restore a quarter of his health. His third ability would be a shockwave that knocks back enemies, cancels out most attacks, and which would be usable while his shield is up. Sort of like a shield bash, but classier. Perfect Cell's perfect passive reduces the effectiveness of any debuffs, such as slowing effects on him. And lastly, his ultimate is the perfect barrier. You can't move while your ultimate is active, but you project a spherical barrier around a large area, preventing any projectiles from getting in. And any enemy inside the barrier experiences a harsh slowing effect, while you and your teammates get a defense buff. It may be all downhill from perfection, but at least we still have perfection's nightmare. From a tank to a DPS, we have Ultimate Gohan, specifically from the Superheroes movie. Being a fan favorite, Gohan gets health like a tank, and the ki gauge to match. He's got a melee combo of average length and damage. If you tap the movement button and the melee button simultaneously, you'll get a little extra movement out of the attack. If you tap the Ki Blast, Gohan will fire a faster but weaker Masenko, and if you hold the button, he will charge a slower and stronger Kamehameha. His first ability is Ultimate Arrogance, an homage to his fight with Super Buu. Gohan becomes invulnerable as he slowly walks forward before striking. If the first attack lands, you will be locked into an animation where the target is knocked into the air before Gohan appears behind them and sends them flying back to the ground. If you act quickly, there's a short window of time to aim where the opponent lands, giving him some added crowd control. His second ability can only be activated while he's below half health. Gohan gives himself a temporary attack and defense buff, as well as auto ki recharge, something which will be useful with his passive. Before that, we have his third ability, a dash kick with 2 charges. It doesn't do much damage, but a movement ability is always useful. Now for his passive, Prodigious Ki. Gohan can overcharge his ki gauge like you would in the Sparking / Budokai games. Along with that, he gets an attack buff in proportion to how high his ki gauge is. His ultimate is the Special Beam Cannon. Transform into an invulnerable beast while the attack charges and then release an instantaneous beam which pierces through enemies and objects to reach across the map. This ultimate has very slow charge time in exchange for potentially devastating damage. Now let's look at Gohan's biggest admirer, Future Trunks. Anyone else remember that scene in Super where Trunks has to reconcile the fierce warrior he knew with the happy, normal-ish family man he sees? I wonder how he would react to Beast. This Trunks takes inspiration from his time in Super. He gets average health and a lot of ki, but all of his attacks use up a little ki to perform. His passive will help to manage that since it busts his ki charge based on how many allies are in close proximity to him. His basic combo is a 4-hit combo using his broken hilt extended with a ki blade, but last hit will do the most damage. Like with Gohan, Future Trunks' Ki Blast has 2 variations based on whether or not you tap or hold the button. The quicker to fire attack is the Gallic Gun, while the slower version, which hits a larger area, is the Final Flash. His second ability has 2 charges and lets him dash forward to deliver a kick to an enemy, and his second ability lets him use Super Saiyan Rage, whatever that is. Ignoring the ill-defined nature of this transformation, it would reduce all damage you take while transformed, while also slowly draining your ki gauge. For his ultimate, there was only one option: his massive Spirit Bomb sword. His Super Saiyan Rage ability would activate alongside the ultimate, giving him its damage reduction. His basic attacks would also change. The melee would become a wide-reaching, sweeping attack to deal heavy damage to grouped enemies, and his Ki Blast would launch a Ki Wave forward. From one swordsman and future survivor to the next, we're jumping to Yajirobe. A weird pick to include at all, but that's kind of the point. He'll also be the third support that can't fly. There might be some balancing issues there. Instead of flying, Yajirobe can sprint faster than any other character can move. You can see it, can't you, in your mind's eye? Him running from Vegeta? Now imagine doing that for a whole match. Yajirobe's melee hit is a single slash with his sword that does more damage the closer he is to the target. Be brave, little big dude. Do it for the damage. For his Ki Blast, he throws her off. That's it. Its damage is just as unimpressive. His passive, which boosts his sprint speed, also allows him to attack while running at top speed, hopefully helping him reach the target to get in for that close melee damage. Yajirobe's abilities all revolve around Senzu Beans, making him a burst healer. His first 2 abilities share 3 charges, which is to say 3 partial Senzu Beans. The first ability throws a Senzu Bean to an ally and restores 1/3 of their health, or you can use the second ability to eat a partial bean yourself. His third ability hands off a full Senzu Bean and fully recovers the target's health. The catch? You have to hand it off at close range. So Yajirobe has to run into his teammate, fully heal them, then get the hiffle out of dodge. His ultimate ability lets Yajirobe tag out of the fight so Korin can take over for a bit. That poor man didn't want to be there to start. Korin rides a flying Nimbus and perpetually flies at Yajirobe's impressive sprinting speed. The only downside to Korin is that his melee attack does less damage than Yajirobe's, but his cooldowns are shorter as a trade-off. To complete the swordsman trifecta, we go to Super Janemba, who has average health and a large ki gauge. His melee combo is a long string of attacks which progressively ramp up as they go on. The first phase of the combo are short-range physical strikes that do very little damage. It then transitions into longer range attacks as Super Janemba begins to attack through portals, which would automatically lock onto the target who received his previous attack. Then, for the final phase of the combo, he would unleash his sword, which would attack with ki waves capable of piercing through enemies and shields, as well as further increasing the damage output. His basic combo would be a good counter to shield teams or tightly knit groups, since the second phase of the combo could attack around the shield, and the final phase could pierce through it. For his ki blast, it would also utilize portals and lock onto the nearest enemy in line of sight. A portal would appear around an enemy and Super Janemba would stick his hand through to shoot a blast which inflicts average damage. His line of sight could be blocked by an enemy's shield, however. In this instance, the portal would appear some distance ahead of himself and fire a blast straight forward. His first active ability can be used as a dive, an escape, or a dash. Super Janemba becomes intangible and invisible for a short time by disappearing into blocks. While in this state, he moves faster and then reforms after a few seconds. This ability has 3 charges and consumes ki to be used. Super Janemba's second ability has a long cooldown and consumes a fair bit of ki to be used, but it would be an easy hit to pull off because it can be activated while he's intangible from the previous ability. If successful, he will lock the target into an animation where Super Janemba reforms behind them and crushes their head between his 2 fists. Yeah, it's that one attack. It wouldn't do much damage despite how painful it looks, because it would stun the target instead. His third ability creates a portal in front of his head and torso, and redirects any ki blast which hits that area. If the ki blast is larger than the portal itself, then it can't be redirected, but will still nullify the damage you would have taken otherwise. Super Janemba gets 2 passives, and one of them is a bad idea. The first is basically the Adam Warlock Resurrect. When he dies, it'll look like he used his Disappear ability, and you'll have the option to move around and choose a respawn point, or to respawn normally, and after using it, there's an extremely long cooldown. The second passive, Embodied Evil, is a dumb joke. Super Janemba takes a tiny bit of damage when he sees an enemy use an emote. I thought about making it based on the text chat, but no matter how this is implemented, it'll be stupid. But yeah, just like the movie, bullying Janemba is super effective. And lastly, for his ultimate, it's the Lightning Shower Rain. Drag your finger through the air and bombard a wide area with lightning fast glass like shards of pain. The ult charges fast, but also consumes ki to be used, and can be blocked by shields or objects. From a demon to a Majin, we have Fat Boo, or Nice Boo, I don't know. Boo probably would have made the most sense as a tank. He has a large hitbox and plenty of tricks that could defend the team. His pliable body could absorb and deflect attacks, Mr. Fantastic style, but I didn't go that route. I wanted to see Boo as a support. Boo would be the support with his large health bar and ki gauge. His melee combo would see him launching enlarged fists so he could easily hit a diving enemy, while his attacks barely do damage. They would hopefully be able to push back the diver long enough for the team to turn around and get rid of them. If only my team would ever do that. Sorry. If Boo sees them approaching, he can fire a mid-range ki blast from his mouth to take a chunk out of their health. If his basics just aren't cutting it to take care of that enemy diver, Boo also has the ability to shoot a large ki sphere that will carry off the attacker. Just be sure you're saving the ability for when you need it most because of its long cooldown. Boo's one healing ability is the Chocolate Beam. It doesn't turn people into chocolate, but creates some candy on the ground that heals you or an ally, whoever walks over it. The ability has 3 charges, but can also be used by spending ki. His passive is also a revive like Janemba's. Whenever Boo gets blown up, he always puts himself back together, and his ultimate is a wide sweeping attack that does low damage but can blow back incoming attacks. Boo inhales a deep breath then spews out a hurricane of morning breath capable of wiping out a city. With our last support covered, let's move to our last tank. Piccolo from Super Superheroes. He has the highest health of any character besides Perfect Cell, and an average ki gauge. His basic melee is a single low damage attack with his stretchy arm, letting him strike from far away. His ki attack has 3 modes of fire you can switch between. The first version is a mid-range and low damage attack, where Piccolo fires blasts to the sides of his vision. His blast will then curve inward and home in on the targets. The second version acts in the same way but fires larger and stronger ki blasts which move much slower. The third version of his ki blast is the Special Beam Cannon. It must be charged before it can be fired, and has 3 stages it can be charged to. Piccolo will also be able to move while charging the blast, but he's slowed as he moves. The first stage is long range, but low damage. The second stage does more damage, and the third does even more than that, but the amount of ki consumed also increases the longer it's charged. Each stage of the Special Beam Cannon has the ability to pierce through targets, meaning Piccolo can do devastating damage if he manages to strike when the enemy is in a line. Piccolo gets one active ability where he uses his arm like a whip to knock back enemies and block non-ultimate attacks. His passive ability allows him to restore health over time if he hasn't taken damage for a few seconds, and his ultimate transforms into Orange Piccolo, which fully restores and increases his health. His melee combo also changes into a 5-hit combo, the last attack of which will stun enemies. With all the supports and all the tanks taken care of, we'll cover the damage who can beat any of those. The body-snatching poser, Captain Ginyu! Ginyu has health slightly higher than average and an average ki gauge. His melee combo is also average in length and damage. His Ki Blast fires a slow-moving explosive ki sphere. What kind of name is Milky Cannon anyways? His first ability uses telekinesis to create a temporary barrier around himself by pulling rocks from the ground, either giving him bonus hit points or negating a set number of hits. His second ability is a powered-up basic Ki Blast, launching the blast farther and causing a larger explosion. A proper Milky Cannon, if you will. Wouldn't want an improper Milky Cannon? A spoiled Milk Cannon, perhaps? His passive is a silly one, and a direct counter to Super Janemba. If Ginyu uses an emote, his defense is temporarily buffed, and if a teammate near him does an emote, they get a defense buff too. Power to the pose! Captain Ginyu isn't supposed to be a difficult character to play, because everyone will have to play him at some point. His ultimate is the body change. Select a target and become that character until you respawn, and the target becomes Ginyu until they respawn, or until they hit Ginyu's ult. To minimize the chaos, a player who is turned into Ginyu just gets their regular character back when they hit the ult instead of switching again. And do be careful about when you use the ability, because bodies aren't the only thing exchanged. Health bars swap too, so make sure you grab a nice healthy one. Alright, save the best for last. There was a lot to consider for how to include Broly, like which one? I decided that if Super Broly was put into a game like this, he would be a tank, and I already had too many candidates for that. So I assigned Z Broly to the damage role. Specifically, this is restricted Super Saiyan Broly, and the goal of the character is to reach your legendary transformation. In the same way I think Goku would get a push from Bandai, I think Broly would be made too strong at launch since everybody would want to play him, and then he would be nerfed and tweaked a little each season. That isn't necessarily how I approach this character. We'll need to start with his passive, with a reminder that this is restricted Super Saiyan. Broly has a restraint gauge, which builds up as he does damage and decreases his movement speed and attack the higher the gauge builds, and the gauge naturally decreases while outside of combat. So Broly would be very powerful when he starts attacking, and gets weaker the longer he's in a fight, as Paragus tries to rein him in. Broly gets a second passive to help offset this debuff. First, the gauge increases slower if he's attacking another Saiyan character, and he gets a speed and attack buff if the enemy team has a Saiyan on it. Then he gets an additional buff if the enemy has a Goku on their team. Now, his health is similar to Ginyu's in that it's slightly above average. His ki gauge is large, befitting his overflowing power. His melee is a short combo with average damage that begins with a short dash forward. His ki attack shoots a barrage of blasts that spread out more and more the further they travel, making it most effective at close range. Broly's first ability is the Machine Gun Eraser Cannon. Fire a seemingly endless barrage of Emerald Ki Blast from your hand. Hold down the button to spend ki to continue firing. His second ability works at close range, where he grabs an enemy by the face and tosses them behind him. Expend ki to follow that up with a single Eraser Cannon for additional damage. His third ability allows Broly to switch up his movement so that he's always flying without using his flight gauge. but he moves slower than he would otherwise. For his ultimate, Broly overcomes Paragus' control for a short time and ascends to his true form as the legendary Super Saiyan. While in this state, Broly's first passive, the restraint gauge, is nullified, and he becomes a whole new character. As the legendary Super Saiyan, Broly has health as high as Piccolo and Cell, the highest in the game, and gains unlimited ki. His melee attacks become an endless combo with increased damage, and he's able to move at his usual walking or flying speed while attacking, because combat is just as natural to this monster as breathing. His Ki Blast alternates launching eraser cannons with infinite range. However, the blasts become more erratic the further they travel. His first ability creates a large Ki Sphere capable of traveling through enemies, doing above average damage, but it takes a moment to charge up. The next ability doesn't do much damage, but Broly flies forward with his arm outstretched. Any enemy caught by the attack will be carried off by him and suffer a speed debuff. His final active ability creates an energy shield around himself to decrease any damage he takes while it's active. While in his legendary form, Broly's passive makes him resistant to all forms of knockback. The length of his transformation can also be extended by inflicting damage, making this the inverse of his restricted form. He does get a buff if the enemy has a Saiyan on it, and an additional buff if they're specifically a Goku character. Well, there it is, from Goku to Broly, what I think it might look like if Bandai made a Dragon Ball hero shooter. Honestly, there is a lot of potential for Dragon Ball to be used for some different game genres than what we usually get. But there is also a long library of Dragon Ball games already, not Xenoverse 3 yet. Still waiting on that. We've been getting DLC for the second one for 9 years now. Any day now. We're gonna get the sequel. I'm sure of it. Right, Bandai?